I mean, that we were really one game out. And I mean, any other year, had we been 6-3, you know, we'd have been
right
in.
there, no doubt.
And I think we were a team that nobody wanted to see.
I'll never
we
forget.
got in the postseason.
I'll never forget to this day. Can't remember who the head coach was at Ottumwa at the time, but I went with Joe to the all conference voting, and I remember he was talking about, you know, why his guys should be all conference, why, you know, this, that, and the other, why guys were getting playoffs, why they didn't. And I'll never forget the quote, "To the victor go the spoils." And so it burned me up that day when he said it. But let you know, sometimes when you've been winning and you've been doing it for such a consistent basis, people expect it. So now you get a little bit of that slack or that leeway. And I wanted to jump across the table that day, but I'll just never forget that. And, hopefully being that team that was victorious or that continuously was a team looked at as a team that's to fear.
Yeah, because I think at the time, Ottumwa, since they had come into the Metro Conference, hadn't lost a game.
No, they rode everybody.
Yeah, and so, it came down to the last play of the game for us, that year, and we almost had them. But, and then like in everything in life, coaches change. It was, Joe decided it was time for him to move on and do something different. And he ended up coming back to Kansas City. I ended up coming back to Kansas City, and you moved on and went to Drake and back to your alma mater through your connections there and started coaching safeties. And what was the biggest difference that you noticed going from high school ball to college ball that first year?
Well, I think probably the thing that I look at the most is we kept it pretty simple, high school-wise. We had better athletes than most. We had some guys that could do things and could run. And, all right, we're going to play cat coverage. You man up and you got that cat and let's roll. You know what I mean? And at times that was beneficial. At times it may have hurt us. But that was the first thing that I learned, getting back under Matt's wing, as well as the guys that I had learned from in college, is just being in a position where, okay, these are things that we're going to do to scheme and to beat people. How do we schematically beat them and not just beat them by out-athleting them. And so I think that was something that was, a big learning curve, something that I really sat down and soaked up. When we were at Roosevelt, I don't know that I looked at it that way. I was just kind of saying, all right, how do we match up against them? Not, okay, well, here's some things that we can do to beat them in that standpoint. And so I thought that was extremely important, just having the guys from a collegiate standpoint. They're going to come and they'll have probably some bad old habits, what I mean? You got to break them from that a little bit. But for the most part, it's a blank palette, it's a blank sheet. So what you teach them is what they're going to execute, hopefully, for the next 4 years. And so that aspect of it, and then coming back in the spring, and now you got the same guys that you had, where it's different in high school. They graduate, they move on, they move away, some move in. Now in college, outside of the freshmen that you bring in, that freshman class that you have, if you're fortunate enough, you move on with them for 4 years, and it's like family. It is family, and they learn everything that you teach for the most part.
Yeah, and I mean, I know, working under Joe and some of those other guys, and some of the other guys that coached us, they always tried to make sure we knew it was about more than the X's and O's of football.
There's no doubt.
You've mentioned that several times. I mean, Joe was a great mentor to both of us also, and, just taught us that it's about more than that. And, I mean, I know that when you got back to Drake, you said your relationship with Coach Jeter, obviously, has become more than football. And so how did you kind of transition? And in college it's different because it's a little more of a business, but you still want to build those relationships. So how did you kind of work those first few years? Man,
I've been blessed throughout my career so far that a lot of the guys, even starting then with Rob Ash, and then it was Steve Loney that came in as their interim coach when Coach Ash left. They've been builders of men and impactors of men. They haven't just been great football coaches. Coach Loney came in and he was an NFL guy. So he had been at Minnesota, he had been at Arizona. So he's coming in, his transition a little bit different, and now he's going scaling back, so to speak, to the collegiate ranks. Now, he had been a collegiate coach before, but, getting to see his interaction with our guys. You know, you think back to with Joe when we would have team dinners on Thursday nights. Man, I have team dinner right now on Thursday. You know, as a 15-year coach. You know what I mean? My guys come. My wife cooks for them. You know, we're able to provide within NCAA regulation a meal for them once a month where we can have that team bond, and it's my position group. Those are things that you get that opportunity to do in college. You know, you get that time outside of the season where you're in the spring, and the spring is really teaching. The spring is really growth, where we're talking about academics, where we're talking about life. And so the difference for me from high school to college was, as opposed to now having that interaction to a certain extent with the parent and the family throughout. When you have that college-wise, but it's a lot heavier in the recruiting process and into their transition. But when you're in college, it's that young man and it's you know, to a certain extent. And so just like his mom and dad or whoever his support system wants him to do and be successful in life, I'm trying to impact him in that same way. Also trying to be a role model where he can say, okay, I get to see Coach around his kids, his family, his wife. How does he handle those things? And again, like I said, the guys that I've worked for, maybe a little bit different than the guys you see on TV, but those guys, that is extremely important to them, and that makes it really easy for me to coach for them.
Yeah, family is very important. You know, so from Drake, you got the opportunity to go to Iowa State. Your younger brother was just finishing up there then, right?
He was there for the year I was there. He was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that was pretty cool.
He was just finishing up, and you were doing the athletic academic coordinator. I remember I got to come up and kind of visit with you and learn a little bit about that. But what exactly, just tell the viewers what kind of you did in that role.
We were kind of, it's more behind the scenes from the coaching standpoint. You see the coaches, you see them getting after them, all those things. But there's so many other aspects and people that are support system for these young men. And so we have athletic academic coordinators that even now at Liberty that work with them from an educational standpoint to say, okay, here's where you're at as far as the classes that you have. Here are the hours that you need. Here's how you need to progress through your major. You got an academic coordinator also. But this position is a little bit more steered toward, okay, we understand that the work-life balance of football and academics. And so I had the opportunity with Coach Gene Chizik and his staff to be a part of that. And everything that I've done, I feel like it's been quite a learning experience. That was a good experience in a lot of ways, but for me, it also let me know that, man, I want to be on the field. You know? It's not in my DNA, or at least at that time it wasn't in my DNA, and this time it's not my DNA to be, you know, in that office and kind of, you know, being in that position. But it's the same thing that you do as a coach. So it wasn't far from it, except for the actual X's and O's game plan standpoint. And, you know, I worked around great people there as well, and they helped me just to continue to develop as a leader, I think. So. And plus, it wasn't bad to get to see my bro play for his senior year. You know, he had a fairly good senior year. You know, again, some lean years for them at Iowa State. Not quite as successful as they were initially, but and I didn't get to see him play in high school. You know, except for one time. And that year, I got to see him play every game for the most part. So it was a blessing for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, yeah, like you said, it's tough to watch really any other team when you're in coaching in season. You know, and I know there's, you know, a lot of games and stuff I miss. People always say, well, did you see this guy play when he was in high school, or did you see, you know, now as a high school coach, you know, I'm coaching on those same nights, so it's like, no, I don't get to watch these other guys. But
no, I would get the call every Friday night when the game was over from my dad. And he, I mean, like I said, at that time they were rolling. He was playing running back and linebacker, one of the probably one. I would think I'd be safe to say one of the better athletes in the city at that time. And so, but it ain't like, it's different. It ain't the same as seeing it. You know what I mean? So
you know, and I know your dad was, you know, at all those games, all your games, and big support system for you
sure.
and your brother, and then the two younger brothers also. Which, you know, I did get the opportunity to coach them a little bit. You know, when they were really young. You know, I was excited to have them. I knew they'd have some good DNA, and
no doubt.
knew they'd be, you know, respectful and do all those things the right way.
Better have been, for sure.
Oh, yeah. And then came back home for a year and coached at the alma mater. I had the opportunity to coach at Grandview for a short time, and like you mentioned earlier, holds a special place in your heart as well as mine. How exciting was that to kind of step back from college, so it's different, but at the same time, you're going home. Yep. So you got to be excited about that.
It was just because, at that time I had been in Iowa for, between school and coaching 8-9 years as a total, as a whole. And so to get back to during that time period, my wife was pregnant with our son, who was our first. So it was a lot of unknowns still as a family and as a father and a husband. And to get back home and be able to experience that here. But like you said, to also be a part of the Grandview community again. It just, just like anyone would describe, I would think it's unimaginable, being on the sideline where you played and now you're coaching and, just trying to bring respect and some sense of glory to the program, just like you did when you played, that indescribable feeling. But, it was something that we enjoyed thoroughly.
Yeah, fantastic. Then you got the opportunity to go over to Lindenwood, over in the St. Louis area, and coach safeties, and then down to Southwest Baptist with a little more responsibility here for the first time. You're, special teams coordinator, recruiting coordinator. I know from knowing you and knowing your family, your work ethic is a big part of that, why you were chosen for those roles. But, just talk a little bit about that and how those conversations happened and how excited you were to, have a little more responsibility.
See, I appreciate Gary being nice because it was, part of my DNA and part of the work ethic, but it's also part of being not as knowledgeable as a young coach, where you say, "Give me everything, give me all that I can feel like I can handle." But I think it forced me to learn a lot at the same time. It forced me to learn a lot more in the special teams portion of the game that, I had only done from a return standpoint. I hadn't done anything else like that. And then recruiting-wise, I just feel like I've been fortunate and blessed. Guys put me in position where it's something that's come natural to me and we enjoy it. So, to have that responsibility as well to kind of help see that you're making an impact as we put together the program. And then to coach the DBs as well. So, like I said, if I know now if I knew now what I know, however you say it, I probably wouldn't have said yes to all three of those things at the same time. Especially not as a young coach, not having a ton of experience. So.
Yeah, I know. I haven't worked in college a ton, but from my couple years at Avila, to wear all three of those hats, because special teams is a third of the game, and so in high school, I feel like it gets worked in with other things, but in college, I'm sure it's like, no, you got your own time to do this, and you're trying to plan that, you're trying to plan what you're gonna do with your DBs, you're lining up recruits for different guys' areas, and hey, these are the kids we need to target, and I can't imagine. That's a ton of stuff.
A lot of treading water those few years for sure.
I'm sure. So from there, you got the opportunity to move on to West Georgia, as the linebackers and then special teams coordinator again. Talk about the transition from, going from you've pretty much been in the DB realm in defensive backfield at some point, but then moving down and working with linebackers.
I feel like, the opportunity that presented itself at West Georgia for me and my family was one that was kind of the springboard from a career standpoint. We were really able to spread our wings. I was learning a different position, coaching a different position, and it kind of really helped me to see things from a defensive standpoint from a broader scale. Being a DB guy, you're thinking, all right, safeties, corners. Whereas, I could tell you how the linebackers fit from a coverage standpoint, but I couldn't tell you, all right, this is how they're going to fit in the run game, and this is how we're going to stop and do all of those things. And so, I also met Scott Simons, who I work with now as our defensive coordinator, Josh Aldridge, who's our D-line coach, and we kind of took off together there West Georgia. You know, we were part of a team that went to the national semifinal game. We went to the playoffs 3 out of the 4 years that we were there. You know, we had